Hello, I'm Alex from Best Recaps, and I'd love to tell you a story. Noah is reincarnated as a noble one day, but there's a major problem. Just take a look at that status screen, it's shamefully low, just straight up embarrassing for someone in his position. The kid was born as the 13th prince of the imperial royal family, and the emperor is quite interested in seeing his new baby boy. During the presentation, the sovereign is informed that the boy's highest magic affinity is with the water element, so as a first birthday present, he decides to give his son a fief located near the sea. As soon as those words leave the emperor's mouth, something crazy happens, and Noah notices a change appearing right next to his water magic, which until then was only E rank. When his father asks to see the baby's status screen, our protagonist gets worried, thinking that with such low grades he'd be discarded like trash. But what happens is a true miracle. The moment the status is displayed to everyone, Noah's water magic jumped from E rank to an absurd double SS rank. The rest of his skills remain a solid F rank, but honestly, who cares about that when a baby shows the highest level of water magic anyone has ever seen? This is a clear sign that he will be a genius in the future, which makes the emperor start to really like little Noah. I have to confess that I'm already loving how this system works, because the reason for this SS rank is precisely the fief he gained from his father, although on his personal screen, the skill appears as E plus S. Another bizarre detail is that the other stat increases came from his maids, and he still hasn't quite understood why, but it seems that the more servants he has, the stronger he becomes. His level is still 1, but since it can be increased infinitely, it's obvious the kid is going to become completely overpowered in the future, even though for now he is still quite weak. While he eats his breakfast, one of his maids named Evelyn appears to warn him that his brothers, specifically the 1st and 4th princes, have come to visit him. Normally receiving family would be nice, but in the last 6 years of life, Noah has learned that those two are complete idiots, so he needs to be very careful when dealing with them. He heads to the lounge area, and after formal greetings, the 1st prince, Albert, announces that he brought a gift. He orders his servant to bring the object, and the moment Noah sets eyes on the sword, it's clear that the thing is completely cursed. You can literally see the tormented souls of the dead hovering around the weapon, and it's obvious that Albert knows the sword is haunted, but he pretends it's a normal gift. Since you can't refuse a gesture from the crown prince, Noah is forced to accept, even though he knows this has everything to go wrong. He holds the hilt and lifts the weapon while Albert explains, as if it were nothing, that this is a water magic sword and that over 120 knights have already died trying to use it. The boy even loosens his grip in shock, but the 4th prince, Henry, tells him not to worry, because everyone who wasn't worthy died the exact moment they touched the sword, so if the curse were going to get him, he'd already be dead. The reason for this immunity is likely his double SS rank water attribute, and it's even comforting to know he won't kick the bucket because of the object. But Noah is furious that Albert risked his life just for a dumb experiment. He keeps the anger to himself and waits for his brother to leave to get some peace. Later, while walking through the halls with his maid Zoe, he notices she looks very sad and decides to ask what's up. Zoe tries to deflect so as not to bother her master, but Noah insists and orders her to tell the truth immediately. She finally gives in and explains that she needs time off to deal with family problems, telling him that her hometown suffered from a flood that destroyed her mother's farm, leaving them without a livelihood. Zoe was desperate for money, and the only solution they gave her was to work in the red light district for a while, which was exactly what she planned to do. But our protagonist doesn't accept this at all. He decides to give her mother a job, inventing the position of professional rear gate closer on the spot, and offers a salary of 10 rin per month. Zoe is shocked because this amount is much higher than normal, and she has never heard of this job, but Noah doesn't care. After all, it's his money, and he wants to help. He even offers an old house on the outskirts of town so they don't have to pay rent, as he would never let a faithful servant sell her body because of a tragedy. But Noah's plan doesn't stop there. He calls his butler, Dylan, and orders him to organize the purchase of all the lands damaged by the flood. Both Dylan and Zoe are speechless, but the prince explains that scammers would surely try to deceive people who lost everything, and he wants to ensure their safety before that happens. Dylan is at a loss for words, seeing how a 6-year-old child can predict things so far ahead, but Noah can't tell him that he has already lived a whole life before this one. The butler agrees to help, but warns that the estimated cost for this would be 700,000 ren, an absurd amount considering that a common adult earns only 120 rin per year. Noah has only 500,000 rin saved and needs another 200,000 urgently. Without many options, he decides to sell the fief he owns, but Dylan warns him that this would be a crime against the imperial family since the land was a gift from the emperor. Even aware of the risk, the boy decides to move forward and accept any punishment that comes from his father. The next day, while preparing for the trip, the fourth prince, Henry, appears by surprise. Unlike Albert, Henry is a cool guy and came to warn him that the sword Noah won has a will of its own and that he will need to earn its recognition to use it safely. Noah thanks him for the advice and leaves for the village of Dasso. He notices that many residents lost their documents in the disaster and sends Dylan to get copies at the government office to speed up the purchases. Meanwhile, the prince decides to see the people up close, and despite Zoe's protests, he heads into the middle of the village. The situation is terrible. The crops were destroyed and there will be no harvest this year, which means the residents will have no way to survive. At that moment, a bell rings and everyone gathers in the main square. Zoe thinks it's for the distribution of food coming from the Empire's relief funds, which Noah thinks is great, but as soon as he tastes the meal, he takes back everything he said. One of the residents, not knowing that Noah is a prince, comments that the food is always horrible like this and that no one does anything. Shortly after, the local government official, Lord Geralt, arrives to inspect the food. Geralt looks at that mysterious stew and thinks it's absolute garbage, but since he's not the one who's going to eat it, he doesn't give a damn and even asks the chef to prepare something decent at his mansion. Noah can't stand seeing this kind of behavior and confronts the official, asking if he is serving that spoiled food to steal the rest of the budget for himself. Thinking Noah is just some random peasant, Geralt openly admits he is embezzling the money because he thinks no one can stop him. Hearing the guy brag about stealing from starving people makes Noah's blood boil so much that the cursed sword starts to react. Geralt gets irritated with the child's disrespect, pulls his sword and prepares to kill him, but before he can do anything, Leviathan flies out of the scabbard and into Noah's hands. The boy's strong sense of justice was enough for the sword to recognize him as a worthy master, and with the weapon's power, he cuts off Geralt's head without the slightest effort, punishing him for the embezzlement and for threatening a royal prince. Shortly after, Geralt's boss, Lord Rowan, appears, and the guards try to have Noah arrested, but Rowan recognizes the 13th prince immediately and kneels in respect. Noah warns that they need to have a serious talk about the situation of the village, making it clear that Rowan is in hot water for having allowed Geralt to do whatever he wanted. The prince orders that the accomplices be punished and that a real meal be prepared for the people. Later, while Noah finishes buying the village, Albert receives the report about his brother using the sword without suffering damage and already begins to plot new plans. Meanwhile, Noah is called by the emperor to explain himself. He was already expecting a huge scolding for selling his lands to buy a destroyed village, but to his surprise, the emperor thanks him, because if Noah hadn't acted, the suffering of those people would have been much worse. The emperor clearly realizes that little Noah is an extremely capable young man and asks him to continue serving the empire with all his strength, something our protagonist accepts with a smile on his face. A little while later, we see the boy visiting the famous city of mirrors, and he's not there for a vacation, but because he heard there's an incredibly talented singer performing there. As soon as the show begins, the prince is completely hypnotized by the girl's angelic voice and is enjoying every second of the performance. But out of nowhere, the vibe is cut when a group of thugs invades the theater and starts yelling at the singer. From what it seems, the girl's father owes a fortune to these guys, and she is there working her heart out to pay off the debt. Only the thugs think she will never earn enough and start threatening her, saying she should go work in the red light district. Everyone in the theater sees the cowardice happening, but they are all too scared and no one has the courage to intervene, so our prodigy decides it's time to step in before the worst happens. He calmly walks to the stage and starts quoting the laws of the imperial constitution that specifically prohibit children from being forced to pay their parents' debts, making it clear that what they are doing is totally illegal. The brutes tell the kid to mind his own business and threaten to teach him a lesson if he doesn't beat it. But the little prince simply summons his sword and fires some warning shots that make the guys realize they aren't dealing with just anyone. Now that they saw the situation is much more serious, the criminals retreat, but they still leave yelling that he will pay dearly the next time they meet. With the thugs away from there, the boy asks his maid to hand a business card to the theater owner, warning that if those guys come back, he should say that the singer is under royal protection. The owner of the place looks at the card and almost falls over, realizing he is standing before the 13th prince. Our protagonist then turns to the girl and asks how much she spends per month to live, and although she hesitates a bit because of the expenses with her sick mother, he announces that he will pay 25 ron monthly to her. The idea is for her to focus only on music without worrying about money or having to return the amount, but for now, he only asks her to finish the performance that was interrupted. Upon returning home, the little genius is received by his housekeeper, but he finds it strange to see a crowd of people bowing outside the gates, and I confess I would be confused too. The maid explains that those people are loan sharks who came to ask for forgiveness for what they did since they didn't know his identity, but the prince sends them all away, stating that not just anyone can talk to him whenever they feel like it. At that moment, Brother Henry appears and, having heard everything, praises the younger one's choice, commenting that giving an audience to this type of people would stain the royal family's reputation. The boy agrees that keeping up appearances is important, but reveals that the real reason for ignoring the subjects is different. Since he wants to support the singer, he felt that if he left the loan sharks thinking he is still furious, they would be afraid to get near the girl again. Henry is impressed with his brother's maturity, thinking it's incredible how he can think so far ahead, something that other princes of the same age, like Frank and Gary, would never be capable of. Anyway, the reason for the visit is to talk about the magic weapon, and our protagonist takes the opportunity to thank him for the previous warning about the sword having a will of its own, which was essential for him. The brother is happy to help, but is puzzled about how a child of that size can carry such a giant and clunky sword everywhere, but the boy shows that it's no problem at all. Henry goes into shock seeing the sword appear out of nowhere, and the little master explains that he is just shrinking the size of the weapon to hide it inside his sleeve. Leviathan has been a national treasure for centuries, and no one has ever come close to doing anything like that, which only proves the absurd natural talent the boy possesses. Later, the prince accompanies his brother to the gate and notices that the thugs from before are still there begging for forgiveness, but he doesn't even give them a look. One of the loan sharks loses his patience at being ignored and charges at him, threatening to kill him, but the little genius knocks him down without even needing to move. Henry asks what the heck happened, and he explains that he just released a bit of Leviathan's power to calm the guy down, demonstrating an energy control that doesn't even surprise his brother anymore. That same night, the boy decides to go to an event in the city and is received by the host, a man named Radok. As they enter the banquet hall, the man notices the sword on the young man's waist and asks about it, since the piece looks very special. The prince explains that it's a gift from his brother, the legendary Leviathan, and the whole hall falls silent upon discovering that a child carries a national treasure. Of course, there's always someone jealous, and a guy in the back starts saying out loud that the sword must just be a toy replica. Our protagonist doesn't let the disrespect slide and releases a fraction of the weapon's power to prove it's real, but he ends up being a bit heavy-handed and almost makes everyone faint with the energy pressure. When he finally stops, everyone is visibly shaken, and to lighten the mood, they start praising how incredible he is for mastering such a weapon, fearing his wrath. Actually, the boy wasn't even that angry, but the sword was, and it decided to act on its own to defend its master's honor. The host asks what should be done with the man who insulted him, and although the punishment should be severe, the prince decides to just let it go. The party continues, and several nobles approach to introduce themselves until it's the turn of Byron Allen, the head of the Allen Company, along with his daughter Cindy. With just one look, the boy deduces that the girl is adopted, which leaves Byron in shock by the precision of the analysis. The man asks how he found out, and the little prince explains that he noticed the composure of a natural-born noble in Byron, while Cindy still seems to be learning how to carry herself. Besides, he noticed the look of someone who was once a slave on her face when he mentioned the adoption. Byron apologizes for not telling him sooner and clarifies that he really bought the girl as a slave, but because she is very intelligent, he decided to raise her as a daughter so she could inherit his business one day. He thought a noble would hate the idea, but on the contrary, our protagonist totally approves of the decision and invites both of them to visit his mansion whenever they want. The next day, the boy goes to the market and finds his eighth brother, Prince Oscar, who invites him to a treasure hunt on Cobalt Street. The place is famous for having many artifacts, but it's also full of fakes, which makes the search very difficult. They spend the afternoon looking, and Oscar is already ready to give up when a book catches our little master's eye. He buys the work for only 3 Rian, and the older brother almost falls backward, realizing it is the grimoire of the legendary sorceress Andrea, an item worth thousands of Rian that the shopkeeper just lost without even knowing. Oscar asks how he knew, but the truth is that the boy only bought it because he felt his status increase upon touching the book. Thinking that the item must have a consciousness of its own, just like his sword, he points Leviathan at the grimoire, and black energy starts coming out of it along with a malevolent spirit. Oscar realizes that the sorceress's soul was sealed there, and that now she will attack everything she sees ahead. He tells his younger brother to move away, but the boy already knows what to do. He lifts his sword and lets out a water slash with full strength, destroying the spirit instantly. The brother is relieved but concerned about potential casualties, but the little genius guarantees that he aimed the explosion at the sky. Oscar is marveled, not only by the quick decision-making, but by the fact that he defeated a legendary spirit with just one blow. At that, a local shopkeeper named Alan approaches and makes a proposal, saying he has an artifact that no one can use, but that maybe the prince can awaken it. They follow the man to the shop and are presented with a special ring that, according to rumors, only works with someone worthy. It seems like a scam, but the boy decides to test it, and to everyone's surprise, the ring reacts and forms a powerful armor around him. The prince decides to keep the item because of its defensive skills, and already puts the ring to the test on the way back, when the loan shark from before tries a revenge attack. The ring creates an automatic shield, the guy is thrown to the ground, and the problem is solved. Later, our protagonist goes to another performance of the singer and is certain that after the attack on the noble, that loan shark is finished and won't be a nuisance anymore. Only the problems don't stop, as 2 drunks invade the stage to hit on the girl after the show. The boy intervenes and kicks the subjects out, but he is already tired of so much trouble and asks the owner to stop accepting that type of customer. The man says the business doesn't survive without them, so the prince simply offers a giant bag of coins and buys the entire establishment. The singer approaches emotionally to thank him and asks how she can repay him, but all the boy wants is to hear her sing once more. One fine morning, Noah is preparing to start his day when he receives news that Marley, the general of Holejoy, is there to visit him. Holejoy is one of the most promising lands within our protagonist's fief, so he accepts the meeting and asks the maids to bring the guest inside. Marley greets him in the meeting room, but the little prince waives the formalities and asks him to sit down. The two met about 1.5 years ago when Marley was appointed general, and taking advantage of the reunion, Noah asks how things are going. He recalls that the official received imperial orders to manage flood control in the area, but by the man's face, he can tell the situation is not good at all. Holejoy is a very rich agricultural land located on the curve of a river, which makes it an easy target for floods, and that's why the emperor had ordered funds to be sent for relief in the region. Marley explains that he hasn't been able to make any real change, and the reason is irritating. The finance minister keeps making up excuses not to release the necessary money. Noah is extremely dissatisfied hearing this, as it smells like blatant embezzlement of national funds, so he orders the general to accompany him, as the two are going to pay a little visit to said minister. Shortly after, the boy interrupts the finance minister's lunch, and the subject is exactly as he imagined: fat and greasy. The official tries to flatter the prince, but our protagonist goes straight to the point and questions why Holejoy's budget is being held back. The minister tries to keep his cool and says he has a good reason, but Noah cuts him off right away, warning that he better not underestimate him for being a child. After all, belittling a prince is an executable crime. The man starts to get nervous and releases a flimsy excuse, saying that since the emperor gave Holejoy tax exemptions last year, he thought it fair that the village use that saved money to pay for this year's works. I confess that this is the biggest nonsense Noah has heard in 6 years of life, and he asks if the minister thinks he looks like a fool. It's obvious the exemption came precisely because the village didn't have a cent to pay taxes, so saying they still have that money is an insult to anyone's intelligence. Realizing he's in deep trouble, the minister appeals to the emperor's name, saying he needs the money to build a royal villa for the sovereign, since he is getting old. Noah notices the fatal error and warns that the official just committed a very serious crime, because besides calling the emperor old, he used his name to cover up a corruption scheme. The minister panics and starts begging for forgiveness, but the boy makes it clear. Either he releases the funds now, or the emperor will find out the whole story. With no way out, the subject runs to obey, and Marley thanks him immensely for the help, although he feels bad for involving the prince in such a mess. As soon as he prepares to return home, Noah receives an urgent call from his father and rushes to the castle. The emperor receives him without formalities and congratulates him on the way he dealt with the finance minister. The boy is surprised by the speed of the news, but the father explains that information is the strongest weapon there is and that his spy network is impeccable. The sovereign is impressed with the 6-year-old son's maturity and with the fact that he has already mastered the sword Leviathan, which is a dark and dangerous weapon. Noah knows well what his father is talking about, as the sword almost killed everyone at that party if he hadn't controlled it. Since the little genius hasn't had formal fencing lessons yet, the emperor introduces Damien Noble, the empire's greatest swordsman, to be his instructor. Damien challenges the pupil to a friendly duel to test his potential, and Noah accepts, charging at the master. During the combat, the boy feels the memories and skills of the previous users of Leviathan flowing into his body, making his movements sharper and sharper. The two lock swords, and when Damien thinks he has the advantage, the prince makes an upward movement and disarms the greatest warrior in the kingdom, leaving both the instructor and the emperor speechless. Since the boy already possesses the skills of a master, there is nothing more Damien can teach. Proud, the emperor appoints Noah as the chief judge of this year's knight selection exam, which is a huge honor. This exam attracts warriors from all over the world, and the winner becomes a direct subordinate of the chief judge. And since Noah gains status when he gets talented servants, he is quite excited. The boy decides to change the rules. He cancels the regional qualifiers and brings the entire tournament to the capital to ensure that no strong candidate is excluded by local schemes or injustices. At home, he talks to Zoe about her village and discovers they usually send only one representative because of high travel and lodging costs. To solve this, the little prince announces he will cover all travel and housing expenses for all candidates this year. Since he doesn't just want to burn money, he decides to buy empty buildings in the area and build a lodging that will have value even after the tournament. To take care of the food, he calls Byron Allen and asks for a quote. The merchant presents an absurdly low value, almost no profit, and Noah soon realizes there is something behind it, as he knows a merchant gives nothing for free. Byron admits he wants a favor in return, that the prince use his influence to hire one of his servants to work at the castle, serving as an informant for the company's business. The boy agrees, and Byron swears exclusive loyalty to him within the royal family. Upon gaining Byron's loyalty, Noah's stats go up, but he notices his water magic level has dropped a rank. Since this power comes from his lands, he notices something is wrong in Almeria and rushes to warn his father. He says he noticed strange signs, and the emperor confirms that a rebellion has broken out there. The sovereign offers the mission to solve the problem to Noah, but the boy refuses and suggests that brother Henry go in his place, as he has more experience. Later, while traveling together in a carriage, Henry asks why the younger one gave up the glory of battle. The little prince explains that he doesn't want to risk the lives of his soldiers in a war he doesn't yet master. Suddenly, Leviathan warns of hostile intent ahead, and Noah orders the driver to stop. He realizes they are rebels trying to assassinate him and runs away from the carriage to protect Henry. 4 water jets sprout from the ground trying to get him, but the boy defends himself with his shield and faces the attackers. The rebels try to surround him. Only the prince's skill is superior, and he defeats everyone in a matter of seconds. Henry is stunned by the ease of the victory and laments not being able to interrogate them, but the little genius reveals he only knocked them out and they are ready to talk. Noah then shares a masterstroke. The Almerian rebels use a lot of cavalry, but the region doesn't have horse farms, which means the supplies come from outside. He orders Byron to buy the entire stock of horse feed from neighboring regions, so the rebels' animals will go hungry and become weak, making Henry's work much easier when it's time to crush the revolt. And that's where the episode ends, and what a brilliant strategic mind Noah showed he had, right? Did you guys like it and want a continuation? Then leave a comment saying you want the next part, Smash that like and hype button to support the video, and subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss any news.